In theory, to put on a wrestling show, all you really need is a wrestling ring for your spandex-clad warriors to do battle in. Whilst most wrestling shows take place in halls and arenas of various size and stature, companies have in the past flexed their creative muscle and put on events in some weird and wonderful places. These exotic locales have at times been visually stunning, logistically frustrating, and on some occasions, downright dangerous. I'm Adam Pachisi from Cultaholic Wrestling, and these are 10 strange places pro wrestling shows took place. Join us.
This video is brought to you by WrestleCrate. WrestleCrate is the original and best wrestling subscription box, packed with the best wrestling merch and shirts every single month, delivered straight to your door. T-shirts like this, or this, or this, or these. WrestleCrate partner with the biggest wrestling stars of the past and present to provide you exclusive merch that you will not find anywhere else. Like this, or this, or this, or this, or these. Sign up today at WrestleCrate.co.uk. The link is in the description below, and use code Cultaholic to double the goodies in your first WrestleCrate. Double! You would be a stupid idiot not to.
Number 10, The Beach. The first ever WCW Bash at the Beach pay-per-views, initially called Beach Blast, took place in your typical boring old arenas. In 1995, Eric Bischoff seized the opportunity to have the event take place on actual sand and booked the show to emanate from Huntington Beach, California. A loaded card saw Sting defend his United States title against Meng, Randy Savage topple Ric Flair in a lifeguard, essentially a lumberjack match, and Hulk Hogan retain the WCW World Heavyweight title by beating Vader in a steel cage match. WCW hilariously claimed numbers between 50 and 100,000 for attendance, but in actuality it was closer to about 10,000. And that's nothing to sniff at, of course, but everyone got in there for free because, you know, it took place on an actual public beach. There were organizational issues on the day, according to Dave Meltzer, who attended the show. First off, there were no bleachers, making it hard for people to see much of the action if they were too far back, while the intense July sun was energy sapping and resulted, ironically, in a lack of crowd heat, not helped by the fact many people there weren't actual wrestling fans. Still, it did look pretty on TV, and the Hulkster no doubt got a massive payday for headlining, which is all that really matters, brother. Number 9, a cruise ship. If a beach holiday doesn't tickle your fancy, how about a cruise? After all, these days you're just as likely to see a pro wrestling show on a ship as you are the sand. I mean, especially if the cruise you sign up for is called Chris Jericho's Rock and Wrestling Rager at Sea. Bit of a giveaway, that. Le Champion came up with the concept in 2018, allowing fans to climb aboard with some of their sports entertainment and musical heroes to experience meet and greets, stand-up comedy, gigs, and grappling. For the first iteration of the Rager in 2018, Jericho partnered with Ring of Honor to produce 4 shows across as many nights, featuring the prestigious Sea of Honor tournament. Going one further, during the second wave in early 2020, the Demo God joined forces with his new employer, All Elite Wrestling, to tape an episode of Dynamite, reviving the Bash at the Beach name in the process. Naturally, MJF got thrown into a pool. Jericho's third cruise once again featured 4 days worth of wrestling courtesy of the AEW crew. Number 8, Penn Station. WWE's Shotgun Saturday Night program was, at least initially, the company's attempt at delivering an edgier product. Something like their response to ECW, only, you know, with wrestling nuns and Sonny having relations with a giant Tickle Me Elmo. If nothing else, at least the show really did look and feel different from regular WWE programming, helped in large part by the list of eclectic venues they booked for tapings. New York night spots like Manhattan's Mirage Club and the All-Star Cafe in Times Square were certainly neat, but paled in comparison to Penn Station, location of the final proper episode of Shotgun before it became a routine Raw pre-tape. Though it wasn't the main event, the big attraction on the show was Triple H defending his Intercontinental title against The Undertaker. The Dead Man's entrance certainly took on a new dimension as he had to take an escalator to the ring, which incidentally was smaller than the normal WWE ring due to the cramped conditions. Taker took Hunter back to the top of the escalator after the match, delivering a tombstone piledriver on it and sending the game off looking like he was 8 pints deep after his work's Christmas party. Number 7, the Mall of America. The debut episode of WCW Nitro took place on the grandest stage of them all. No, wait, sorry. I mean the grandest stage of them all. While running a wrestling show from an actual mall may seem a little minor league when stacked up alongside a major arena or stadium, Bloomington, Minnesota's Mall of America certainly made a strong first impression to those tuning into TNT on September 4th, 1995. According to WCW Senior Vice President Eric Bischoff, the brains behind Nitro, the decision to run the show from the Mall of America was one born out of necessity as much as anything else. The company weren't exactly setting arena box offices on fire at the time, typically taping their televised product from Disney's MGM studios in Florida. Describing the mall crowd as a little bit of smoke and mirrors to get a sizable audience in without having to worry about selling out a 10,000-seater, Eazy-E also recognized that the mall setting would provide a unique aesthetic. As a bonus for the hungrier fan, Hulk Hogan's Pastamania eatery was just a short walk away. Number 6. Wall Street. WWE had previously run a short outdoor show in the heart of New York City when they invaded Times Square for the WrestleMania 11 public workout in 1995. Vince & Co. popped across the Hudson River 5.5 years later to put on a more ambitious show on Wall Street. The company was celebrating their shares being traded on the New York Stock Exchange and put on a spectacle during lunch hour on October 25th, 2000. The street was packed to see the event, though live reports suggested the suits weren't that bothered about the in-ring stuff and were way more into the personalities, promos, and confrontations. The only real attempt at an actual match was the Hardys versus Lowdown in a tag team title bout, though nobody did too much since it was only meant to be exhibition stuff and it lasted barely 5 minutes. Steve Austin was on hand to give Taz a stunner following the Human Suplex Machine's victory over Al Snow, while Triple H ran in on Chris Benoit's encounter with Kane. Originally, Vince McMahon wanted The Rock to wrestle a bear on the show, according to Bruce Pritchard, in some heavy-handed visual metaphor about bull versus bear markets, because, you know, The Rock was nicknamed the Brahma Bull for those who don't understand true creative insanity. Number 5. An active war zone. During the Attitude Era, WWE Raw was often said to have come from the war zone, but in 2003 that statement was genuinely the case when the company presented SmackDown from Camp Victory in Baghdad, Iraq. The brainchild of John Bradshaw Layfield, who had gone on several USO-sponsored tours of military bases, the Christmas in Iraq show came together quickly and with several caveats attached to it. WWE were only allowed to take a crew of 34, bringing over 19 technicians and 15 talents handpicked by Vince McMahon, who also took the trip. There were legitimate security and safety concerns, and everyone involved was briefed about the potential issues, but thankfully it all went off without a hitch. WWE dropped storylines for the show, which took place in front of about 5,000 troops in a makeshift arena they had helped set up. Some of the wrestlers were apprehensive about the event, and it was said to have been an exhausting endeavor due to the nature of the travel schedule, but WWE ended up turning it into an annual tradition. Number 4. Gan Regima Island. The country of Japan has specialized in wacky and wonderful locations for wrestling events, with promotions from FMW to DDT promoting matches in everywhere from campsites and trains to electrified swimming pools. Long before any of those, the country's leading outfit, New Japan Pro Wrestling, hosted matches on the deserted island of Gan Regima, which had been the site of a legendary samurai battle in the 1600s. The first Gan Regima deathmatch took place in 1987 between New Japan's main man Antonio Inoki and Masa Saito. Lasting a grueling 2 hours and change, it was far from a technical triumph and feels about 5 times longer than it actually is. The spiritual sequel between Hiroshi Hase and Tiger Jeet Singh 4 years later, on the other hand, lasts a comparatively breezy 70 or so minutes, edited down on New Japan World, and is far more compelling. I mean, it's still not something you need to go out of your way to watch or anything, but it is a gory and inventive brawl nonetheless. As for why New Japan felt the need to go to an uninhabited island twice for these kooky clashes? Well, curious viewer, like nicking a Freddo bar when the shopkeeper isn't looking, I guess sometimes it's fun to do things just because you have the opportunity to do them. Number 3. Sturgis Motorcycle Rally. More mid-90s madness from WCW now, as their pursuit to put on wrestling shows in the balmiest places possible took them to Sturgis, South Dakota for the annual Sturgis Motorcycle Rally, where they presented Hog Wild. Like Bash at the Beach the year before, everyone got in for free, and what's more, at future shows rebranded Road Wild, they brought their big fat hogs with them. Since they were giving up the live gate, WCW had to take Nitro from Disney MGM Studios for a month beforehand as a cost-cutting measure, as well as strike sponsorship deals with companies who poured money into the rally itself. As a show, it really did look different from just about everything else, though the chopper-mad audience could be indifferent, if not downright hostile towards things that they didn't appreciate. Logistically, the venue choice posed problems, particularly when it came to travel and accommodation for the wrestlers and crew, though many of the bonebenders, including motorbike enthusiast Bischoff himself, rode themselves there. The inaugural Sturgis show was a good effort, all things considered, but later editions weren't up to par, if Leno what I mean. Number 2, the roof of WWE HQ. In the mid-90s, WWE attempted an ambitious production when they filmed a new opening credits sequence for Raw on top of WWE's headquarters, aka Titan Towers. It necessitated a giant crane to move ring equipment up there, and a helicopter was enlisted to capture aerial footage. It was a visually stunning bit of business and a novel way of using company premises. 25 years later, WWE upped the ante, though not because they wanted to. The COVID-19 pandemic had thrown everything into flux, but the WWE show went on, whether they had to film in a sanitized performance center in Orlando or an empty office building in Stamford. For the 2 Money in the Bank ladder matches at the namesake premium live event, the rules were altered so that participants would have to fight their way from the ground floor of Titan Towers to the roof, where a ring was set up with the briefcases suspended above it. It was absolutely bonkers, featuring a food fight, oddball cameos, and King Corbin chucking Rey Mysterio to his, at the time, presumed demise. Number 1, Pyongyang, North Korea. We have seen a lot of previously uncharted territory on our countdown so far, but WCW and New Japan's decision to run 2 shows in Pyongyang, North Korea in 1995 takes some topping as far as strangeness goes. The idea of Japanese professional wrestling legend and then politician Antonio Inoki collision in Korea was supposed to improve diplomatic relations between Nippon and the so-called Democratic People's Republic of Korea. He was one of the few people who could gain true access to the insular country and took advantage of New Japan's working relationship with WCW to put on 2 star-studded cards as part of the officially titled Pyongyang International Sports and Combat Culture Festival for Peace. Taking place inside the mammoth May Day Stadium, both days drew over 150,000 people, though official attendances are disputed, and really it's a moot point since people had to be there. Most watching live had never seen professional wrestling before and didn't quite know what to make of the spectacle, while the American contingent of wrestlers experienced a serious culture shock of their own as they had their passports immediately confiscated on arrival and were forced to participate in some good old-fashioned propaganda if they wanted them back.